I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up, a Modi miracle or just good timing? We look at what's behind India's rise to become the world's fastest growing economy. Gold rush, market turmoil is sending investors flooding back to the traditional safe haven asset. But is gold worth its weight? Latest figures have confirmed India as the fastest growing economy in the world. The country saw better than expected growth of 7.5% in 2015. Now, India has benefited from low oil and commodity prices, but it's also undergoing an economic overhaul led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Shona Bhattacharya has more.
A first since the start of the 21st century, Asia's other giant, India, has outpaced Chinese growth. In 2015, India says its GDP grew by 7.5%, significantly more than its rival's 6.9%. Low oil prices are a key driver of India's growth. As one of the biggest oil consumers in the world, the 70% slump in prices has given the economy a major boost. The growth figures are a political victory for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He came to office in May 2014, promising sweeping changes to the economy and pro-business policies.
Come, make in India.
In under 2 years, his government has passed a series of economic reforms, including legislation that allows more than 50% foreign investment in India's aging railways. Indian construction projects can now accept foreign investment too, as can the large coal mining sector.
I want Indian companies to become multinational and expand their reach to various parts of the world. We want this, but we want to make our own country stronger too. We should take steps to provide employment to the youth. This government is committed to development.
But other reforms have gotten stuck in the mud. A sales tax on goods and services still hasn't been implemented on a national level, and minimum prices for many agricultural goods remain in place. Economists say despite the strong numbers overall, several sectors are struggling, including exports, cement production and investment. Furthermore, financial gains continue to be out of reach for many of the country's poor. There's also a question mark over the figures themselves. A year ago, India changed the way it calculates GDP. The Statistics Office says the changes are in line with international norms, but they've simultaneously ushered in higher growth rates too.
So how real is India's growth miracle? Well, to talk about this further, I'm joined from London by Madhur Jha, who's a senior global economist at Standard Chartered. Thank you for joining us on People and Profit. So how much really of this pretty impressive growth figures from India should we attribute to the efforts of Narendra Modi in reforming the economy?
Well, clearly, I think India was, as you know, stuck in a bit of a policy paralysis phase before the elections happened in 2014. And clearly after that, what we've seen is there's been a lot more confidence in the ability of the government to deliver reforms, which had completely stalled ahead of the elections. But also there's been a pickup in sentiment of the local consumer community as well as the investor community to be able to push through some of their own changes. So to some extent, it is attributable, of course, to the elections and to the fact that we are seeing little and small moves being made by the government in terms of bringing about reforms. But I think it feels like a lot bigger change just because there was so little happening before the elections.
So how do you assess the progress, really, of implementing those reforms? Because Narendra Modi came to office with pretty big promises across the board for the economy. How do you feel he's done so far?
Well, I think, of course, we have to remember that Mr. Modi's government still faces huge challenges in getting reforms passed in the parliament. The BJP government only has a majority in the lower house of parliament, which in itself was quite surprising because everybody expected that the elections would result in a coalition government. So even the majority in the lower house was a very big positive. But in the upper house of parliament, Mr. Modi's government does not have a majority, and so it's very difficult to push through the big bang reforms that a lot of people were expecting to see after the elections results came through. What I think that they have been able to do is implement a lot of maybe unpopular policies, such as they've pushed through fuel subsidy cuts. They've also reduced the minimum support prices in agriculture, another maybe unpopular move amongst on a more populist scale. But they've also pushed through a lot of other reforms which are helping to improve the business environment and helping to restore some confidence, especially in the business community, that India is open for business.
Now, India's benefited quite a lot from that slump in oil prices too. Is it in for a shock if those prices are going to rise? Not that we're expecting that to happen anytime soon, of course.
Clearly, of course, as you rightly pointed out, India is an oil importing country, and the drop in oil prices has benefited India quite substantially, not just because you've seen a drop in imports, and so your current account deficit, which used to be around 5% in 2013, has gone down to something like 1.5% right now, which is very good in terms of being able to manage expectations about the currency moves, etc., but also because it has helped lower inflationary pressures in the economy. So again, inflation was running over 10% in 2013. Now it's just about 5%. So clearly both of these together have implied less pressure on the economy, less pressure on consumers. Consumers have more ability then to go out and purchase and buy things. And so clearly this has been a positive. Of course, if oil prices reverse, it is going to imply that India will have to see a higher current account deficit that will also push up inflationary pressures.
Madhur Jha, Senior Global Economist at Standard Chartered, thank you for joining us.
मेरे साथ दोनों मुट्ठी बंद करके बोलिए, भारत माता की, भारत माता की।